Everyone's happy. I'm going to start recording and we'll start the session. Thank you everyone for joining our Enrichment Week session on mastering your CV. You'll see on the screen, you've got Alice, Tanya and Pauline. They are our resident experts within Kaplan. They will be talking you through the session. Just keep your eyes open, please, on the chat boxes. If you want to ask questions, you can do that through there and through the Q&A boxes as well. Also, just before we get to the end of the session, I'll put a link in there to a survey. And we'd really like you all to complete the survey as possible. It's one of those ways that really helps us develop and get these sessions better for the future and for future apprentices coming through. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Alice, Tanya, and Pauline. They're going to tell you who they are and take you through the session. So, thank you, ladies.
Hi, everybody. So, my name's Tanya. It's lovely to have you all here today. So, we'll be discussing the essential skills in writing a CV or even updating and amending a CV. So, I know the majority of people on the webinar will be already undertaking an apprenticeship. So you'll already be in a position, but your CV isn't just to find another role at another company. You'll also need one to apply for internal jobs, so promotions and progression opportunities. So keeping your CV up to date, so you're not sort of scrambling around at the last minute when you see an opportunity, is really important. So your CV, it's a chance to showcase not only what you've learned throughout your studies, but also the skills and enthusiasm and the potential that you can bring to the table. So just on the agenda today, so we'll be looking at the importance of formatting. So how to structure your CV effectively, tailoring your CV to fit the job description or the industry that you're applying for. And then lastly, your personal statement or personal profile, so which is at the top of your CV. Which highlights sort of your attributes and helps you stand out to a recruiter. So hopefully by the end of the session, you'll feel more equipped to put together or update a CV that not only reflects sort of your journey so far, but also sets the stage for exciting opportunities ahead. So as I said, my name is Tanya. So I've worked with Kaplan for 11 years. And I've recently moved into an account manager role. But previous to this, I worked in the recruitment team as the recruitment team leader. So recruiting across all levels, including accountancy, tax, digital, data, and IT. So I provided sort of advice and guidance to candidates in regards to CV writing, interview preparation, and just general careers advice. So I have quite a lot of experience in this area. So that's me. So I'll hand you over to Pauline. So Pauline, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody. So I've primarily worked within financial services throughout my career, including 7+ years working with apprentices in a trainer providing setting. I've also worked a number of years within careers advice and guidance, providing people with support with CV writing, interview techniques, and other aspects of career transition. So now I'll pass you over to Alice.
Hi everyone, my name's Alice. I've worked for Kaplan for about 5 years now. My current role is as a service operations manager. So what that entails is I support a team who support learners and apprentices with enrolment and exam bookings. I've also worked with interns recently, developing them and developing their CV and interview skills. All right. So moving on to the next slide, what will be first question for you all today, if you can use the chat panel, who here feels confident writing a CV? Okay. So we've got some yeses, some not really, some fairlies. So quite a lot of mixed feelings, I think I can gather for the confidence of writing CVs. Okay, perfect. So hopefully after today's session, you'll feel a little bit more comfortable and confident in writing a CV. And hopefully you can take some of the hints and tips we give you and you can add them to your writing of your CVs. All right, so first off, I'll be starting today's CV writing workshop off by talking to you all about the importance of formatting. So moving on to, thank you, Guy. So firstly, running through the importance of formatting, you want to try and keep your CV, keep it quite snappy. So 1 to 2 pages long, ideally. There's also quite a lot of different types of CVs that you can use. So some examples, you've got the skills and academic CV, where you'll put your qualifications first, and then you'll go on to talk about any relevant work experience you've got. So this style of CV is great for anyone who's applying for a qualification-based role, where prospective employers would be keen to know what level that you've achieved in your qualification. So I feel that this type of CV probably fits the audience today. But to note a few others, we've also got the reverse chronological order CV. That's probably the one that's most used further along in your career. So the reverse chronological order CV, this is the one that describes your work experience in reverse chronological order, and it means that you're describing your most recent job first and then moving backwards in time for every subsequent position. So the next point to make is around your personal details. So it might sound obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many people forget to include their name, their email address, the contact phone number, or their address or location. So to avoid any awkward moments, it's important that you just make sure that you've clearly presented that information at the top of your CV. And then moving forward, interests and achievements. It's great to talk about any relevant interests at the end of your CV, but make sure that you try and keep them relevant to the role that you're applying for. So, for example, if you play football in your spare time, this showcases great teamwork skills. So it is important to try and keep your interests relevant to the role that you're applying for. And then additionally, to keeping it snappy, what you want to try and do is use bullet points. So keep it short and concise. It ensures that your CV is kept short enough for recruiters to read through it at a quick glance. So recruiters won't really sit and read through paragraphs upon paragraphs. So you want to make sure that it's easy for them to identify your strengths and what complements the role that you're applying for. So another quick question to the group today, if you want to use the chat panel, how long do you think a recruiter spends looking at your CV? I'd be interested to know what you all think to that. Okay. So people are saying roughly 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 45 seconds. So I think you'll all be really surprised that it's actually, on average, a recruiter will look at your CV between 6 to 8 seconds. So if something doesn't catch their eye, and if you haven't been able to keep it concise, they'll just be on to the next one. So yeah, so it is important to, I don't know, bullet point, keep it short, keep it concise and snappy. And then another thing that you want to try and be aware of is your font, your style, etc. So what I mean by that is just make sure that your style and the size of the font is consistent throughout your CV. It's important that you also head up each of the sections of your CV and avoid putting underlining or boxes on your CV. So the reason for that specifically is ATS. So ATS, or otherwise known as the applicant tracking system / software. I'm not sure if any of you will have heard of this just yet, but I'll give a brief overview of what this is. Basically, ATS is something that a recruiter will use. It's AI software, and it allows the AI software will sift through the CVs and perform the first initial check. So it makes it easier for recruiters, as you can imagine. But the issue is that because it is a software that's sort of sieving through the CVs, boxes, underlining, anything like that, it can confuse the system. And there's a possibility that it will reject your application for that alone. So you want to try and avoid using those things. And then finally, you want to try and avoid using hyperlinks. So the reason for that is linked to ATS. Even if it's for your LinkedIn, it can mess around with the ATS systems, should a recruiter be using those. So that's kind of an overview of the importance of formatting. So I'll pass you now over to Pauline for the next section.
Next slide, please, Guy. Thank you. Okay, everyone. So I just want to talk to you about tailoring your CV. Now, it's a good idea to have a generic CV that you use as a template, but I wouldn't recommend submitting that to a prospective employer or a new department that you're looking to move into. The idea is that you need to have a look at the job description or the job advert, see what key skills the employer is indicating they require, and then you tailor your CV to that. Now, bearing in mind, as Alice mentioned, that recruiters will initially only look at a CV for 6 to 8 seconds, what you don't want is for the important information that they're looking for to be lost in loads and loads of other detail. So as I say, a template is great so that you've got everything there ready. However, strongly suggest that you tailor the CV to the applicant, to the job that you're applying for. Now, there are sites where you can pop your CV in. The idea is that what you can do is you can copy and paste the detail of the job advert, job description in, copy and paste the content of your CV in, and the site will tell you how closely you match the requirements of the job advert. So what you want to do is have a think about the key skills that you have, look at the job advert to see what key skills they're indicating they require, and those are the ones that you want to pop onto the CV that you're then going to submit. Think about what transferable skills you've got. As I say, it's really important to tailor that CV. What they want to know is what skills have you got that they'll be interested in, and they will be looking to see that you've demonstrated and proved that you have those skills. A little bit like if you've been on an apprenticeship recently, you're currently on one, I'm sure your talent coach has probably mentioned to you that you need to evidence those skills and behaviours that you're claiming that you've now got as a result. Car statements is a good way of evidencing this, and on the next slide I will be talking to you about car statements, but also ensure that those points that are important as indicated to the employer are high up on your CV and they can't miss them. What I don't suggest you do is include contact details of references on your CV. The idea is what you don't want is for any potential new employer to contact your current employer to obtain a reference before your current employer actually knows you're going. So again, I'd suggest not including those on there. And also, we all know the importance of, personal characteristics, equality and diversity. But actually, is your age or your gender or anything actually pertinent to your application? Just be aware that, yes, okay, they're not allowed to, but just, it's not important to your application and you don't want to be subject to unconscious bias. The other thing I suggest that you don't include in your CV is a photo. Again, you don't know how that's going to be perceived by a prospective employer, and it really isn't important to the application. So, Guy, could I ask you next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, so I mentioned car statements briefly. Now, car statements are a great way of evidencing you've got those key skills that you've bullet pointed into your CV. They're included within your employment history, and they should be a short, snappy narrative of work that you've undertaken that proves you've got the skills you claim to have. There should be no more than 3 to 4 lines long, because if you think the average job description tends to say there are 4 to 5 skills that they're looking for, and if you provide a massive narrative, your CV then could be pages and pages long. So as I say, each one should be no more than 3 to 4 lines. I've popped a couple of examples in just to give you a bit of an idea. Now, they should be written in the past tense to evidence that you've done it. They need to be clear what you've done. And CAR stands for Challenge, Action and Result. Now, some of you may be more familiar with the acronym STAR, which is Situation, Task, Action, Result, but they are the same thing. So, for example, I've popped one here for communication. Presented some key company changes to my team, ensuring I used both visual prompts and clear instructions. This ensured the transition progressed smoothly, and the team was consequently recognised for this within the company's monthly awards scheme. So the idea is that you talk about the challenge you were set, what action you took that proves you've got that key skill, and what the result was. So why was it successful? Why did it benefit that employer? As I say, there's a couple of examples there. More than happy to share the slide with everybody after. That's not a problem. Now, writing CAR statements can be quite a challenge, and a lot of people find this is the biggest challenge they face when they're putting their CV together. What I would suggest is that think of some examples of work that you've recently done, and the more recent the better, so that new prospective employers don't think you possibly have got skill fade. Have a go at writing a CAR statement. At first, I wouldn't worry about the 3 to 4 lines I've suggested. Write your CAR statement, make sure you get it down, because you can then look at it and find ways of shortening it and still getting that across. The challenge really is actually making sure that you've got down what you did, why it was successful. And as I say, you can then think about reducing the size of it to make sure that it's short and snappy. Okay, now over to Tanya.
Hello. So I will be covering the personal statement section. So what is a personal statement or a personal profile? So it's an introductory paragraph at the start of your CV, so explaining your background and career aspirations. The purpose of a personal statement is to capture the employer or recruiter's interest, so they go on to read your CV further and hopefully invite you for an interview. So as Alice said previously, a recruiter only looks for you sort of the initial sift for around sort of 8 seconds. So putting sort of lots of information in that first personal statement is really important. So first point on the slide, so take a few lines and not a few paragraphs. So a recruiter wants sort of a snippet or an overview of your skills and why you'd be a good fit for the position. So it's recommended that your personal profile be no more than around 8 to 10 lines. So it's just to capture the recruiter or employer's sort of interest. So also to include sort of your current situation. So are you currently completing your A-levels? Are you working in finance or IT? Are you studying sort of AAT or ACCA? So just a little bit about what you're doing at the moment. So again, tailoring your personal profile. So we spoke about tailoring your CV, also to tailor your personal statement to the sector or the job that you're applying for. Highlighting areas that are most relevant to the job, making sure that your career aspirations fit the position on offer. So here it'd be a really good opportunity to have a look, another look at the job spec, and mirror some of the language that is being used, mentioning keywords and transferable skills that you have. So highlighting sort of any attributes, goals, summarising sort of why somebody should consider your application. So include some information about your personal attributes and skills, you know, communication skills, team working skills, and experience in areas of work that you've undertaken that are relevant to the position. And also really, really important is to proofread your personal statement and also, you know, your CV as well. So making sure that it flows properly. So it's sometimes a really good idea to read it out loud or read it to somebody else, just to make sure it makes sense and like I say, it sort of flows properly. And also remember to spell check, so for any spelling or grammar mistakes. So what not to mention in your personal statement. So it needs to, like we said previously, sound as though it's from you, so not written in the third person. And also I've seen a lot in the past sort of people maybe quote a famous author or a famous singer. So, you know, quoting Taylor Swift or Beyonce in your personal profile, it doesn't need to be there. And then any sort of hobbies, interests, there's obviously going to be a section on your CV for that, so you don't need to pop them in there either. And then don't misrepresent, make sure that everything's correct that you're stating in there. And then also don't use too many buzzwords, so things like passionate, excellent, focus. You know, a few buzzwords are okay, but you don't want them to sort of be every fourth word, because it just won't sound right. And then if in doubt, just make a checklist. So think about sort of three main questions. So why you're applying for the position or the sector, what are your sort of long-term career goals, and also what relevant skills and experience do you have that make you a good fit for the position. Okay, next slide, Guy, is just sort of an example personal statement. So I will try and read all this out without tripping over all of my words. But here we go. I am an eager and driven individual with a passion for completing tasks to the highest standard. I have recently completed AAT level 3 via an apprenticeship, and I'm looking to gain further experience within finance as well as progressing to AAT level 4. I have experience in bookkeeping using Sage software, reconciliation of sales and purchase ledger, preparing end-of-year accounts and VAT returns. I am very proficient when working alone, reaching individual targets, as well as striving to achieve goals as part of the team. Building these skills have helped develop my time management, which in turn has strengthened my abilities to effectively schedule and prioritise my workload in an organised manner. In 3 to 4 years, I see myself completing the necessary qualifications and working as a fully qualified accountant. So there, as you can see, there's a little bit about sort of what the individual is doing at the moment, information about their experience and skills that they could bring to the position, and then finally their long-term sort of career aspiration and goals. Okay, so that brings me to the end of how to write a personal statement, and also almost to the end of the session. So just one more question sort of we'd like to ask again in the comments, if you could sort of write some comments in there. Who feels sort of confident updating the CV or writing the CV? A bit more confident. And just to add, I'm not sure, hopefully you will be aware that we have got a microsite that has got lots of information about sort of updating, formatting your CV. So I'm not sure if we could maybe just pop it in I can pop it in the chat function, or you know, you can reach out to us later. And we've also got a recruitment team, and they've got sort of lots of examples on CV writing, CV templates, how to structure a personal profile, sort of examples. So again, if you wanted to reach out to them, you know, feel free to do so. But I can pop the recruitment team's email address in the chat function, and then you've got it there. And as I say, they've got lots of useful resources if you do need any help sort of in the future. Has anyone got any questions?
I think
And
there's a
you've got one
couple.
from Pam.
Sorry. Yeah, there's a couple
That's
in
all
the
right.
chat that I've noticed.
With this digital age, should you include your LinkedIn if asked, or is this fine to exclude? I think that's a really good question.
So I can answer that one. So with regards to adding your LinkedIn, if it is asked, then it's not a problem if it's asked. However, for the purpose of ATS, the applicant tracking system, it is good to avoid adding links to your CV, really.
Can I just expand on that one, perhaps, Alice?
Yeah, of course.
With applicant tracking software, because it's purely software, it has certain criteria programmed into it.
Oh,
I think Pauline may have frozen.
I think we've lost her.
The ATS will be set up to automatically reject anything with hyperlinks in it.
Sorry.
Okay, Pauline, can you recap that? Because you froze a little there, unfortunately.
Oh, did I? Sorry. Yeah, just to kind of quantify that, any employer that uses applicant tracking software, the software will automatically be set up to reject any CV that has a hyperlink in it, with the protection for the employer in case it links to a virus or spam. So the recommendation is not to include hyperlinks at all in your CV.
Amazing.
Thank you.
And
We've
then
also got a question from Robbie. Should we keep a CV as PDF or just Word doc, conscious of the ATS system?
I'll pop that one if I may. I'd recommend sticking to Word. I get your thought process with a PDF. Nobody can amend it. It can't be accidentally adjusted. But the only thing as well is to applicant tracking software won't necessarily reject a PDF. The only thing is you don't necessarily know what criteria the employer set up into the software to sift those CVs. Word, I think, is accepted by everybody. It's quite a standard out there in all industries. So it's probably a good one to stick to.
and just to follow up on that, from working obviously in the recruitment team at Kaplan, I think sometimes using a PDF, it can be a little bit tricky for us as the recruiter to maybe just make any small edits or take certain bits out. So using a Word document is much easier sort of for editing purposes as well. So I'd stick to Word, even though I think PDF can sometimes look a little bit prettier, but yeah, stick to Word if you can.
Great, thank you, Tanya. Should we assume that all employers are using ATS?
ATS is at best. Okay, ATS notwithstanding, a lot of employers will only consider the last 10 years of your employment history, primarily because the way they view it is the fact that anything over 10 years is likely to have skill fade if it's not been used in a more recent setting. The only time necessarily it may be prudent to go back more than 10 years might be if you've had some role changes and it's the latest example. So, for example, myself, I'm with you there, Pam. My employment history goes back way early 80s. I may have done a role perhaps in the 80s, the 90s, moved completely away from the industry and now gone back to it. So therefore, any examples would be prudent. But on a general scale, it's normally the last 10 years that an employer will consider.
And I think just to the point, I know Guy, I think Pauline broke up a bit before the answer to that question, but the ATS, I found when working in recruitment, it was more of the sort of the bigger organisations that are generally maybe use an ATS system. Sort of maybe smaller businesses, obviously they won't receive maybe a very high volume of applications. So there's probably somebody sifting there manually rather than, you know, using an ATS system. And I think Peter's asked a question about if he submits a personal statement and CV to the email address I've provided, can I get feedback? Definitely. If anybody wants to send their details to the recruitment team, then yeah, they're more than happy to give you feedback on your CV overall, or sort of how to write a personal statement if you've included, you know, everything that you should. So definitely reach out to them if you want to.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, ladies. Our time has so quickly come and gone. It's 12 o'clock. Thank you for putting that together. It's been amazingly informative for me, and I'm sure for the learners on the call. So thank you very much. You've got some email addresses there, and if you could complete the surveys, that would be brilliant. And thank you very much for attending. Cheers all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.